Hello.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Jessica. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Really good. I'm glad you were able to come on and join me this month for Celiac Awareness Month.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been 3 years in a row. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm happy to be able to continue hearing about your story and sharing your thyroid eye journey. It is specific to the eyes, correct? Graves' disease?
There's two components of it. There are technically two separate conditions. So there's Graves' disease, which is the autoimmune condition associated with an overactive thyroid, and then there's thyroid eye disease, which not everyone with Graves' disease gets, and it can also affect people with Hashimoto's, and in rare cases, it also can affect people who have a normal functioning thyroid. But it's most often associated with Graves' disease. But separate conditions, but a very long and very intertwined journey with both.
Right.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Oh, it has been.
It has been a long time. And a long time for just treatment in general for you as well. Different
Yeah.
specialists, and I mean, you've got, are you done with your surgeries now, or are you still waiting for
Um,
more?
so what we're doing now is that we have finished oh gosh, in terms of like the whole thing, the four main surgeries, and we're waiting for a little while to see how things continue to heal because ultimately, like small bits of swelling take a long time to go down, and there were some surgeries that were extremely invasive, and so healing from that does take a while. Like I
It's
still feel
fine.
like tingly things in my face from nerves refiring and waking up
Wow.
after surgery. So currently working with my doctor to assess progress and then go from there and see how it goes.
Oh, that's a, it's scary for me. I mean, when I learned about your surgery journey and such, you think about your eyes are, I mean, you use them every day, and with the risks involved, there must be just a lot of risks involved in the surgery and everything. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're weighing your quality of life too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
how did you make the decision, I guess, to go forward with the surgeries?
Well, before we like deep dive into the surgeries,
Mhm.
I'll give like a quick trigger warning that some of these things are
Right.
gross. And so if you're very sensitive to talking about like bodily functions and invasive procedures, they're like maybe come back in a half hour kind of thing. We're talking about something
Right.
else. Um, but it's also important to remember too, like this is very specific to my journey and my symptoms and my situation and what my doctors recommended for me. So other people will have different situations, and if you're looking for medical advice, please like go talk with your medical professional. If
Yes,
you're concerned about what your medical professional is telling you, go seek out a second opinion. Because everyone is in a completely different boat
that's
with
right.
autoimmune conditions. Um, but gosh, we were talking before this. I'm going to try and give like the Cliff Notes summary of a lot because it's like a 4 hour conversation, and like
Yeah, it's
I need a
a long
couple of
journey.
cocktails for that. So the first surgery that I had gotten was a total thyroidectomy, which that was an extremely emotional decision because I'm a singer, and you probably can't see it, but I have a little scar right here on my neck. And the thyroid is extremely close to several nerves that control the vocal cords. And about 1% of people who get a thyroidectomy experience permanent vocal damage afterwards. And so that is like the worst fear. And some people may say, oh, but only 1%. But if you're used to being the 1% of people who have celiac, and the percentage of people who also have Graves' disease, and the percentage of people who also have thyroid eye disease, and the percentage of people who need surgery because of thyroid, you get used to being that person, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I wasn't responding to treatment. I wasn't responding to the medication at all. I was wildly swinging from my thyroid being very underactive to very overactive. And we tried every dosage. I think we tried multiple dosages twice. And sometimes I was overactive and sometimes I was underactive. Like none of it made any sense. I remember seeing one of my doctor's colleagues when she was away, and she was like, boy, that number is not supposed to go this way. Would we go this way? And I was like, this is how apparently it goes for me. So what would normally happen, my doctor told me, is that, that she didn't want me on high doses of this medication for a very long time. And I wasn't responding to it well, obviously. And she gave me a time frame where she said, within this specific time frame is normally when people, in my experience, would go into intermission, into remission. And
Right.
if they did go into remission, because not everyone does. So let's give it to that time frame, and let's, fingers crossed, keep trying, and let's hope you go into remission. And then, that'll be that. But the other treatment option was like basically zap the thyroid. It's a radioactive iodine treatment. And that, I was told, can irritate and exacerbate the symptoms associated with thyroid eye disease if you already have it. So already that was immediately off the table for me. And so I knew, okay, well, let's hope I go into remission, or it's a thyroidectomy, which is off the table as well, because I'm not doing that,
Right.
so my vocal cords. And it was really hard. And it's really difficult to feel so awful for such a long time. And our bodies are not supposed to function with way too much or way too little thyroid hormone. That's not good.
No.
And there are very real dangers. Like my resting heart rate was like double someone's normal resting heart rate. It was incredibly scary, constantly. And
your blood pressure must have been just weird. Was your blood pressure an issue too?
I always had, it was a very weird thing. I had blood pressure that was like zombie level. Like I would go to the hospital and they would like try to leave, and they'd be like, oh, we can't let her go. Her blood pressure's too low. And I was like, no, that's absolutely normal. So I got used to telling people like, my blood pressure is this. Please write that on the forms that that's my normal blood pressure. Because it was just always low. And throughout my journey with this thyroid stuff, my blood pressure is now like regular person normal, which would normally be like me spiking, but it's consistently this level now. So I don't know exactly what changed with that. Maybe there are other factors in play, and it's not just related to that specifically, but my hands were shaking constantly. Like, it was embarrassing how much my hands were shaking and how out of control I felt within my own body. And it wasn't a good place to be. So the few months leading up to what I knew would be the appointment to talk about a thyroidectomy, the stress level was through the roof, knowing that that was probably going to be the inevitable talk. And that's what it was. And my doctor was so kind and said, you've been struggling for so long, and I think it's time for you to feel better. And she sat with me, I think, for like 45 minutes at the end of the day. Like, it was way longer than, most appointments. And we just sat and we talked about it, and she gave me like a million referral forms and gave me doctors to meet and gave me different things to look out for, that she would, trust in a doctor specifically with this. She said, we're in New York City. There's got to be, the people who work with people with thyroid issues who are on Broadway and all of this stuff. So you're going to
Right.
find the right person. And I found the right person, and she specialized specifically in vocal preservation during thyroid surgeries. And I
Perfect.
met her, and it was like the world just opened up. And I said, okay, I feel very comfortable with you. Let's go. Let's do it. And that's how I made the decision. Ultimately, is one of those things where I had very little choice in the matter because my health was
Yeah,
continuously, you know,
for sure. I mean, and being on the brink of whatever was going on with you must have been just really affecting your mental health as well.
yeah. And I knew too because within all of this, the eye condition is the thing that, despite all of the concerns about the high heart rates and the thyroid being completely out of control, the real difficult emotional stuff for me came from the eye condition, which we've talked a lot about before. That
Yes.
is, um, uh, what's the word that I saw online? Facial disfigurement
Oh.
is how it's described. I know it's a hard word, it's a
Mhm.
phrase, but at the same time, I felt validated when I read that you know that's what it is, and thank goodness someone's discussing it in a very serious way. Like
Yeah.
celiac disease isn't stomach aches. It's a
Right.
serious autoimmune condition,
Right.
and this is seriously what this disease does to people. And that's only the exterior component that people can see. Fortunately, I didn't have things like double vision and vision loss, which can happen too, which is very scary. I had all of the a lot of the physical symptoms that really bothered me and really disturbed greatly my mental health, my sense of self. I feel like there's a line of the person I was before this disease and the person I became after this disease.
Right.
And it's a very specific line. And this disease has just been so traumatic and heartbreaking. And so I knew with speaking with my doctor that based on my symptoms, there were certain things that he wanted to do before considering surgery. One of which was that my eye symptoms had to be stable for X amount of time because they wanted to do surgery after stabilization, not do surgery and then continue to experience more problems.
Right.
There's an active phase and an inactive phase. It could reactivate, hopefully it doesn't, but normally the surgeries are done in the inactive phase unless it's a sight threatening issue. But he also wanted my thyroid levels to be stable for 6 months to a year. And I was like, they're never
Never
stable.
stable.
So the timeline was so important and so specific. So I needed to get the thyroid levels under control for X amount of time before we could even consider the very emotional eye surgeries. And
Right.
so I always had it in my head. I'm doing these eye surgeries. I'm ready for it and I can't wait. And I spent every day for the past like some years just waking up and saying one more day closer. And it was really difficult to work like that, to live like
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
And so with you've talked a lot about how my first surgery was delayed due to the pandemic, and we didn't know when it was going to be rescheduled because it was right at the beginning of everything, and who knew how long it was going to last, and it's still going on, and people's surgeries are still getting delayed. So that first one was delayed. Eventually it was scheduled. And by the time things rolled around for us to start considering new things, my doctor said, hey, there's this new drug that actually, based on new studies, I think you're potentially a good candidate for. So we tried the drug, and then the drug, I think where we talked last year, was that the drug treatment, the manufacturing of the drug was paused due to the vaccine manufacturing. So that was paused for multiple months. And then I had to restart the drug to try it again because you can't just, stop it after trying it once or twice and then say, like, did that work? Maybe. I don't know. So we
Yeah.
had to see if the drug worked or not for me. So then I went back on the drug for several more months only to find out that it didn't work. It's worked well for a lot of people, but some people have not responded well to it. And I was unfortunately one of them. So that was like 8 months of, waiting constantly for a meaningful treatment that would do something. So then, at the point when I was ready to get scheduled for surgery, it happened to be when everyone else was rescheduling their surgeries that were either put off because they had to be put off because of the pandemic and they had no choice, or because they themselves put it off and decided to do it later. Everyone was getting surgery at the same time. So I had a multiple month wait to have my first surgery, and then continue to try and get the next one scheduled as quickly as possible. But it did take several months. I think I'm maybe 6 months out from my first eye surgery now. So it was just continuous stress. And, I had told my doctor too, I will be ready, the drop of a hat, if someone can't make their
No
surgery.
kidding. Just to
So
get rid of all that stress that you're dealing with all the time.
So, I was crossing my fingers and hoping, maybe today will be the day that I get a call that something opened up, and we can get in sooner. And it just took an extremely long time. And I understand the complexities of the pandemic. And we've spoken before in our previous chats that, it's not to talk about that one person's medical care should triumph over someone else's medical care. It's that
Mhm.
when the medical system is stressed and is overwhelmed, everyone loses.
Absolutely.
Everything is bad.
And unfortunately, we shouldn't necessarily get into the government, but when things aren't handled well at that level, it just
Mhm.
affects everything, right? We dealt with the same thing up here in Alberta too, where there's thousands of people waiting still for surgeries. The last time I checked, it was over 7,500 people waiting for surgeries, and important surgeries,
Yeah.
brain surgery, and things that are life-threatening, right? And I'm not saying that your surgery wasn't, don't get me wrong, I don't wanna say that, but you know what I mean? Like, it's because it affects your quality of life. It is an important surgery,
Yeah. Like,
and
if I could have gotten my surgeries at the time that we anticipated, my mental health would be in a completely different
yeah, I
space.
bet.
I would be a different person.
Yeah.
But I think that part of the conversation that's important about this is not everyone realizes what an elective surgery is. At least in the US, what it's called an elective surgery. Because I
Mhm.
remembered seeing an article at the beginning of everything when my surgery was canceled of like, your elective surgeries are getting canceled and it's for everyone's own good. And the article like didn't get
Does
it, the complexity of it. And it's a complex topic that like, of course the hospital system was overwhelmed, but it's, if you're gonna get into this complex topic, talk about it in a complex way,
Mhm.
because elective surgeries are different than emergency surgeries. Elective surgeries in the US are just things that get scheduled in advance. They can be things like organ transplants, very, very important
It's the
surgery.
same up here too. Yeah.
hmm And that's on a schedule, which is an elective schedule. Then there's
Mhm.
emergency surgeries where you go to the emergency room and you get surgery, you know? So I think that I'm glad that people are having more of a conversation about what that means and what that means for people with severe and chronic illnesses,
Mhm.
because some people have gotten worse. Their symptoms have gotten worse, their
Mhm.
disease has progressed, some people's mental health has severely declined, some people have passed away, you know, and it's all very tragic.
It is, and it's affecting every, um, like, it's affecting everybody, no matter their social status, economic status, whatever. It's everybody. I mean, well, I shouldn't really say that because I guess there are some people who can afford to, you know, go the
hmm
private route and have things done there. But
hmm
it's a little bit different up here in Canada, where the private isn't as prevalent as down in the States. So most of it goes through provincial health.
And I really had to focus a lot on, you know, very, being very serious about social distancing and
Mhm.
everything. Because if I had gotten COVID the week before a surgery, my surgery would have been delayed for months.
Yeah, for
Months.
sure.
hmm
And who knows, honestly, who knows what COVID would have done?
hmm
The
Yeah,
other thing.
exactly. That's a big question. So the maybe the bow on top of this is if you need any more reason to take the pandemic seriously, consider people who are waiting for medical treatment and had all of these complicated things happen to them.
Right.
If you need any more reason, there's so many reasons to take the pandemic
Yes.
seriously. It's still happening.
It is. We're in it. It's not going. It's still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So so I've had three surgeries for anyone in the thyroid community who might be watching. I had 2 orbital decompression surgeries. That's 1 on each eye, and then I had a lid surgery. I don't know. Should I talk about the gross stuff?
Go for it.
So, the symptoms that these surgeries were trying to address, because unfortunately, once the damage is done, it's just done. Some people have damage and then it gets better, and some people don't. And I was in one of those places where the damage was done, it wasn't going to get better, and it was severe enough that I needed surgery. So the 2 big things that were happening to me was that the muscles behind the eye get swollen and they push the eyes forward. And then that does a whole bunch of different, talk about the next thing. The next thing is that the eyelids pull backwards. So you're left with this staring effect where the eyes are moving forward, they look very big. And then it also greatly affects everything about your life because I couldn't close my eyes all the way. So when I was sleeping, when you think about the lubrication that your eyes have to have when you're sleeping, I would wake up in the middle of the night constantly in pain because my eyes were so dry. And then I would be exhausted all the time because I was constantly waking up and putting eye drops in. My eyes would be really red from all of that, and then they would overproduce tears. So I'd be like walking down the street with my eyes super red, hurting, dry, tears running down my face as my body was trying to, give some sort of relief.
Right.
So we don't think necessarily about how one thing can affect absolutely everything that's going on. So the first surgery that I had, orbital decompression, is designed to, because the swollen muscles stay swollen, and it's designed to not repair the damage, but to give more space within the face for the swollen muscles to exist. Okay. So here's the gross part. I had 2 surgeons. One was my eye surgeon, and then the other one was an ENT. My ENT went up my nose and pulled out bone from my skull. I know, it's so gross. Also, who thought of these surgeries? Who was like,
I don't know, but wow.
You know what's a good idea that we should try?
I'm going to replay this for Sam later because I bet you he'd find this really interesting.
It's just like, I'm so amazed by medicine and surgery. It's
no
wild.
kidding.
So they wore away at the bone here and pulled it out through my nose. And then my eye surgeon went in through the corner of my eye. So I had very tiny scars here, and he took bone out here. And so that opened up the eye socket area a bit to allow my eyes to move backwards so that the swollen muscles and the eye could have exist within the same space.
That's amazing. It's amazing that they would even think of that. Like, they know enough about that area to know that that would work.
Amazing. And there are risks associated with it.
Right.
Especially that's I believe what's called like a 2-wall orbital decompression here and here. I was told that they didn't want to do a 3rd wall with me, which is under the eye, because they were concerned about a risk for double vision. So so it's complicated, you know. It's with the face, everything's so complicated. So different doctors may have different opinions and different specific things that based on how they work. And this is what my doctor thought would be the best fit and the best approach for me. Right. So we did one eye, waited like 6 weeks, did the other eye. And then a couple weeks later, I had lid surgery, which I was awake for, even crazier. and I
That would have really messed with my anxiety.
And that's what I told my doctor. I highly recommend this if anyone's awake for a surgery ever and you have high anxiety like me. I highly recommend this tool, I guess, is I told him, look, I need to focus on something because if I'm just nervous, I'm going to be so nervous.
Right.
And I need something to focus my energy on. Can you give me something to do? And he said, yes, focus on relaxing your eyes. Listen to my voice. When I tell you to open your eyes, open them. When I tell you to close them and relax the eyelid. And I was like, that's enough. That's great.
Right.
And everyone was so nice going into the operating room. Like everyone was joking about like working out and their lives. Like it was such an interesting experience compared to my previous surgeries, which was, go in, you get strapped up, you immediately
Right.
get out.
Very clinical and very, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, and it was still serious, but I was like, oh, I could even crack a joke before my surgery. But so they gave me a lot of, painkillers and numbing drugs and things like that. And I had an anesthesiologist working with me and communicating with me where she would ask me, like, let me know if you're nervous. Let me know if you, I think she used the phrase like, this will make you not care. If you start to care, let me know.
I like that. I
At
do.
one point, I was getting so nervous that my toes were curling, and I was like, I'm caring a lot. So, but like, I even thought, like, at some point, I was like, I'm doing a bad job because I couldn't see. I didn't know exactly what was happening. But when I opened my eyes, there were like barriers and different things going on to protect my actual eyeball. So I didn't know exactly what was going on. So at some point, I opened my eyes and I said, Doctor, I'm failing. Are my eyes open? I don't even know anymore. But like also a wild surgery. So you can't see it right now, but I do have two lines going all the way across both eyelids. And I found out in a very crazy way how deep the incision was because I assumed that it was a very surface thing where they released some muscles and things like that. But here's another gross part. So trigger warning, come back in like 10 minutes. I was sitting on the couch and I was watching TV with my husband, and suddenly I couldn't see out of one eye, and I just remember thinking, "This sucks. That's not fair." And I bring my hand to my face, and my hand was covered in blood, and yeah, and blood was like pouring down my face. And so I ran to the bathroom. My husband already had all of these like pieces of paper in hand to look up my doctor's phone number. And I'm cleaning up the blood. And I told him, let's text my doctor. He's really good with text. And I need to see where the blood is coming from. And I think it's stopping. So it stopped just as quickly as it started. And the doctor said, oh, nothing to worry about. Like, let me know if there's more bleeding. But the incision actually went all the way through. So it was like basically just a little leak, I guess, from the incision on the inside of the eyelid. And everything was perfectly fine after that. But disclaimer, friends, if you experience sudden vision loss or sudden bleeding, please contact your doctor immediately. And if you can't get a hold of your doctor, go to wherever your doctor said to go to for emergencies. So fortunately, my situation, we explained everything very thoroughly to my doctor, and it was perfectly fine. But I didn't know the incision went all the way through my eyelid. Crazy thing. Again, who thought of this surgery?
I don't know. But I mean, and when you think of all the way through, like the eyelid, like how thick is the eyelid? Because when I think the eyelid, I think it's just a tiny little thin piece that
Right.
goes over your eye, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, well,
The
how
body's crazy.
that's, oh, I don't know, man.
Surgery, amazing. So what that did was that ultimately released some muscles that were tensing and pulling backwards so that my eyelids could relax down to more of a, comfortable place. And I can almost close my eyelids. They're still very dry. I wake up in the morning with with my eyes in pain sometimes, but at least I'm not waking up as much in the
Right.
middle of the so I'm still experiencing that kind of dryness, and the scar tissue is still healing. So hopefully we can hope it gets better. But ultimately, I've had some people tell me like surgery will fix everything,
Yeah,
and
no, it doesn't
you were
work
so
that
you're
way.
so nice with that, Michelle. It doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
And one, it doesn't fix the severe emotional trauma. Every time I see my doctor, like I thank him because things are ultimately much better. Um, Looking in the mirror is better. You know,
Right.
I haven't tackled photos very much yet, like twice maybe, and whew, okay, it's a process. But I see pictures of the me before this all the time, and it's a different person. It's a different person mentally, but also physically.
Right.
And I am working on going through the sense of loss of that that person who was unburdened by the trauma and was herself and looked like herself. I will not see that person again, and I won't see who that person grew to be, and that's really sad.
I can relate.
Yeah.
So,
Um, so I'm working on that. I saw my doctor the other day, and he said, "How are you doing?" And I said, working on it.
mhm,
It's a process,
yeah,
and so I'm working on that. But also, it didn't fix everything. My eyes look much more normal now, which I'm grateful for. I wasn't able to raise my eyebrows before. I
mm,
it'd be interesting to go back and watch some of the old videos that we did together, because I was so focused all the time on relaxing the muscles of my face, because if I was really animated, then my eyes would get bigger,
right.
and then I would feel like I looked alarming, and I would constantly get triggered if I saw myself in the camera, with my eyes very big. And so
Mhm,
I would just focus on relaxing so much, and I could feel my voice flattening as well as my face. And it was sad. I felt sad to not be able to express myself.
right.
And in one way, I was safeguarding my mental health, but also in another way, doing a disservice to myself. There was no happy thing to do.
Yeah.
But now I can raise my eyebrows.
I do have to say that you are more there's more expression. There's
Yeah.
more expression.
Mhm.
And now that you've said what you said, I I can I can remember how, I was thinking, geez, I hope she's okay. Maybe she's just really nervous or, because you were very kind of in it was very internally. I don't know how to say
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
yeah,
And that was probably exactly it, because I was trying to do what I could
right.
to make me feel like I could communicate in a way that was a little bit more like me, you know? And that's the thing, like the conversation about this, like normal,
Mhm.
but it's also like feeling like yourself, and
Yes.
how you like I've had discussions with people about this on like, well, is it just your eyes, it's just your appearance, or it's just
Mm,
your voice? And I'm like, but all of these things are so tied into our identities, right? How we see ourselves in the mirror, how we express sound, how we express ourselves through our face,
yep.
and it's all very tied to who we are and how we see ourselves, and that's what's important. The other things are still important, but that's how
Yes, but
I explain it to people, is that it's so much more than just one component. It's how we identify with ourselves.
mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I can again relate in that
Yeah.
respect. I mean, I don't have the same, obviously, thyroid issues, although apparently I may have some thyroid issues. We're looking into that. But I think it just ties into the chronic illness
Hmm.
community. It's all a part of it. And anybody who has a chronic illness, when it affects their outside appearance, And it's not just it's not an invisible illness anymore.
Yeah.
And you look in the mirror and you don't recognize who's looking back at you anymore, and it's really it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really it messes with your head
Yeah.
big time.
I think it can be hard in some aspect too, because I think that we're used to talking about like invisible illness and
Yeah.
visible illness. But what if it's something that has small changes that maybe not everyone notices right
Mhm.
away? Like maybe it's like watching your hair grow, you know? Like that's a hard thing to like what degree of, Bob do I have right now? And like watching that kind of minute change, but can
Mhm.
be a very drastic thing when you look at the beginning to the end, and so the visible component, a lot of people don't realize that it's a visible chronic condition, so
Mhm.
it still has a lot of components of the invisible illness side of it,
Right.
because it's watching your hair grow. But
Right. It
like
happens
even
over
now,
time.
my eyes are still farther forward than they were, you know it's not
Mhm.
the same. I still look like largely a different person. And one of the things that unfortunately, isn't written about a lot and isn't studied a lot, but I've talked with my doctor about it, is how the face shape changes as well with
Oh, really?
thyroid disease sometimes. And a lot of people I've spoken with have said, like, specifically this area of their face changes.
Hmm.
And people have said that their face gets more circular or square, and so that's an additional component where you're like, okay, well, there's not a lot of, there's no treatment for that side of it, like
No.
what's
And what causes that too? Like you
I think that what I have, and someone please, someone please send me the answer if you have the answer. But the with autoimmune conditions, your body is attacking certain things, like Graves' disease is attacking the thyroid, thyroid eye disease is attacking the muscles behind the eye. Um, Theorizing that it's attacking different cells around the face
Mhm.
and causing them to swell up in a similar way that the muscles behind the eye swells up.
Yeah.
But
Makes sense.
I hope that within the next couple of years, maybe there's more talk about it, because
Mhm.
there's like we just got a drug approved by the FDA like a year ago for thyroid eye disease, and other than that, like you just wait for surgery. Like there's a couple of other things that doctors will try, like steroids and different things like that, but like that was a big monumental drug to come on the market.
Mhm.
Yeah, if you're listening, do talk with your doctor about other treatment options, because they may have something to recommend for your specific case. For
Right.
me,
Right.
hmm so, I mean, there's so much unknown about
Yes.
thyroid conditions, about celiac disease, and so much celiac disease we know is extremely underfunded compared to other diseases. And the autoimmune stuff is hard. It sucks.
They don't have they just I don't know. I find that out of not out of all of the disability community, but there seems to be more treatment options for other disabilities than there are like for celiac. With celiac, what can we do? Change the way we eat.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah.
There's nothing. I mean, we treat symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
If you get gluten, you can treat symptoms, but the actual disease itself, there's nothing we can do except for just change our diet, which
Yeah.
is, I mean, huge, obviously. But then you've also got the other side where it's like, wow, all we have to do is change our diet,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well,
you
for people who respond, we know that there's some people who are not, and hopefully
yes,
get treatment, better treatment options, soon. Um, but yeah, some things, I think that the drug for thyroid eye disease, it wasn't specifically for that originally. That wasn't what it was testing for, designed for originally. It was for something else, and then they were like, "Oh, hey, cool! That's actually good for this. Great." Like maybe we'll have some happy occasions like that in
yeah,
the future
yeah.
for different diseases. Some happy accidents.
Well, I actually had one of those happy accidents myself because I take something called venlafaxine, which is for PTSD.
Mm.
And I was taking that for a couple months, and all of a sudden, my chronic pain started lessening. So I
Hmm.
did some research into it, and sure enough, it has been used in the past for chronic pain, neurological, like the firing, the those sharp pains that go through the neurological ones, and it's amazing what it's done for me over and above the
Mhm.
PTSD help, So yay for happy accidents.
Hey, I'm so glad. Medicine's amazing, surgery's amazing.
Yeah, it's true. It is. I mean, it's not for everybody. It's your comfort levels too, right? If it's something that you feel comfortable doing, it's all such an individual thing.
It is, and I think that some people, like, are very rightfully nervous about
Mhm.
I was terrified, absolutely terrified, especially with my thyroid surgery. The other eye surgeries, I was like, "Let's do this thing." I was ready. But yeah, I see a lot of people who are extremely nervous and are saying, "I'll never do that." But maybe we read a lot about the horror stories, and maybe we
Mhm.
should read also about the success stories, and
Mhm.
know that an invasive surgery can be a very, very, very good thing.
It
You
can
know,
be.
I woke up from because I'm speaking me personally, my thyroidectomy. I woke up, and when I woke up, I felt instantly like something had changed. And I think that part of it was the relief of the months and months and months of stress that
Yes.
was up to this. But, like, let's be realistic. There was a lot of release of that. But also, I felt like deep down, like there was something that wasn't fighting.
Mhm.
I try and use phrases like, I felt like my body was working against me constantly
Mhm.
rather than working with me.
Right.
I felt like my body wasn't fighting itself. Of course, my eyes were fighting, like, all
Yeah,
of this
but
is
yeah,
going on.
they
But
were still
right
fighting you,
here,
yeah.
here, my body
One
was
thing at a time though, right?
right here, my body was like, "Oh, great." And I'm responding great to my new thyroid medicine. I think that people are nervous about being
Yeah.
on medication for the rest of their life. I mean, like, it was really hard for me to be on a medication where it was trying to block the thyroid production
Mhm.
versus just, you have no thyroid, here's some. Like,
In a pill form, yeah.
here you go, here you
Yeah.
go. It's a much easier medication for me personally to be on, and it's great. I forgot that I could feel like my body's working with itself. And
Mm.
there were things that I noticed too about, because one of the things that the thyroid controls is the metabolism, the hormones with all of that. And so I had one of the symptoms of Graves' disease when your thyroid is overworking is
Mhm.
that your metabolism speeds up. So I lost a little bit of weight, and that's one of those good indications of weight is not necessarily, being thin is not necessarily an indication of good health. It could
Right.
be a sign of a very, very, very serious condition. And so I had lost some weight, but between the process of going here and here and here and here with my thyroid bouncing around constantly and my body fighting itself, like, even though I would go into that overactive state again, I just kept gaining weight because my body was so much on overdrive and so confused and fighting itself constantly. And over the past couple of, like, maybe the past year or so, like, I've done nothing different with my diet. I've done nothing, like, if you see my Instagram page, I'm eating pizza like 3 times a week. I'm eating cupcakes all the
Nice.
I know. I know. Someone asked me, like,
Every
how
time
often
you
do you
post your pizza, I'm like, "I want a slice."
someone did ask me, like, how often do you make that pizza? Because, like, I'm not judging, I'm aspiring.
Yeah.
And so, like, I've done nothing different, but my weight has gone down because my body, I think, is just not fighting itself. It's not in
Yeah.
fight or flight. It's, my metabolism, my body is working with itself. And so throughout, a long period of time, it said, oh, here we are now, you know?
Right, and it was probably hanging on to everything, every nutrient and every anything in the food that you ate, just in case, you know.
Right. My body was freaking out all the time. So who knows what the body was thinking with everything. But, there were a lot of things after my surgery that just, things changed.
Mhm.
And my body was working with me, is what I think it was.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We have a comment here from Bonnie. Says my mom had her thyroid out in 1965 and lived till 1999.
Hmm.
Very possible to live without a thyroid.
Right?
Yeah.
I still get thyroid hormone. I get it. I get it every day before my coffee. Hmm. The question was, we have another question. Why did I have it out? We'll have to chat after this to rewatch the whole thing. But basically, I had it out because I have Graves' disease and didn't respond to the medication well. Um, didn't respond well to it at all. I never was in a balanced place. I was either always too much, too little thyroid hormone. And there were very few other options, but it wound up being a really, really good option for me.
Hmm.
Hmm.
For sure.
Yeah,
You're
thank you
right.
for the question. Hmm.
Yes.
More detailed responses in the first half hour of the chat.
Yeah.
Ooh, we're already 45 minutes into it. Can we move to the second half of stuff?
Yes.
The
And we
question
can talk for like an hour and a half, so that's all good.
sounds good. I cleared my throat. All right. So one of the things I think that this is such an important topic. So thank you for wanting to talk about this.
Oh yes.
Uh, I've written a few articles about it and had some big conversations with the chronic illness community online about what not to say to someone with a chronic illness. And if you have a chronic illness and you're here, then you've probably heard many, many, many things. And I think that it's important to know that I have put my foot in my mouth many times with things and went, oh, that was wrong. Or sometimes didn't realize that was wrong. I have done it many times, and all of these comments stem from good intentions, right? They're normally always for good.
Normally.
We're mostly talking about the normally good intentions today, but we don't realize, because we don't live with this other person's things, that what we're saying might actually be hurtful, even though we're intending for it to be a good thing. And we don't want to unintentionally hurt our loved ones, and the only way to figure out what does that is to talk about it and to have this conversation. So I think that's really important, and I think that if anyone out there has said these things, it's a learning experience. Like I said, I have put my foot in my mouth many a times, and I'm constantly trying to navigate, thinking, okay, if this person's experiencing some degree of this, how do I, how would I want someone to comment to me?
Yes,
It
exactly.
takes a lot of thought, you know.
It's
Mhm.
just very easy to stick your foot in your mouth, though, honestly, because if we just don't, how do we know what someone's going through? So it's so important to just kind of have that I think that far too often people feel the need to comment on everything,
Mhm.
no matter whether they have any expertise in it or not, or any knowledge of the situation or not. And so it's just kind of something that we as a human race tend to do. You know?
Right?
Yeah, and it's just we want to relate though, I think too, in a way. You know,
Mhm.
um, sometimes maybe it's because we want to center ourselves. There's that too, but
Yeah.
depending on the situation, right?
Yeah. Someone told me one day about, they were asking me some questions, and I was like, I'm fine asking questions. I'm fine with this today. Cool.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, well, I have XYZ disease. And I'm like, well, okay.
Thanks for sharing.
And I was like, that thing has nothing to do with autoimmune conditions, and there's okay. But it's one of those things of yeah, we try to relate to other people. And so in doing so, we often say out loud, I relate in this way, and it really has nothing to do with the thing. Or it draws the attention to you instead of to the person who you're speaking with when it's supposed to be about them. But you're right, that's how we as human beings work
Yeah.
in our minds is oh, okay, you're saying this thing, I have to be able to understand it in my brain some way, so I should say it out loud.
Yeah, yeah.
I've
That's
done it.
pretty much
I've done it.
exactly it, because I'm horrible for that. Uh,
Mhm.
I have my impulse control needs work.
And you know what? We all, realize after the fact, and maybe at some point we start realizing, okay, gonna like just zip it for a sec and think about that.
Yes, and that's hard
Like,
sometimes.
but there are other things too, where someone in the thyroid eye disease community told me that someone came up to them one day and said, like, "Wow, your eyes look crazy." Like,
Wow.
that's
See, that's just
not helpful, but it's our brain saying, I see something, I need to say something about it.
mhm,
And we have to be aware of that tendency and
mhm.
say, you know what, if you see something, uh, they probably,
They're aware.
they're aware,
They're
you don't
aware.
have to. Mhm. It's
Yeah.
like say like you're eating a gluten-free muffin and someone is like, is that muffin gluten-free? And you're like,
Well, yeah.
yeah, it is.
I know what I'm supposed to do for myself. I know to eat gluten-free, but
Right.
yeah, or it's just people like even with my scar, to have somebody come up and say, "Oh, what'd you do?" And I'd be like, "Well," because it feels like it almost feels for me personally, I'm not saying that everybody feels this way, but for me personally, it feels like I owe somebody an explanation as to why I look different,
Hmm.
you know?
And it
And
demands, sorry, I cut you off.
oh, that's okay. No, but that's the feeling I have, and that's probably a me thing, you know?
Yeah.
But
But no, not just a youth. I mean, that's a me thing too. It demands your emotional energy
yes.
very quickly. You could be going throughout your day, having a nice day, and then someone comes up to you and says, like, "Why are your eyes so big?" And you're like, "Cool. I was having a good day."
Oops. Sorry,
Okay.
noise.
Like, yeah, I was having a good day until this moment. And but like something that stems out of a good intention. I've gotten calls before where people call me like I'm running an errand, I'm like having a good day, things are fine, I'm in the middle of a work day, and then I get a call where someone says, what's going on, how, like, what is this thing, how are you doing, what happened to this, and I'm like, whoa, like I get that you're concerned about me, but like I was not emotionally prepared to have an in depth discussion about something extremely traumatic in my life.
Right.
And so, like, how do you approach that kind of thing if you're concerned about a loved one? Which I think is what we grapple with.
Mhm.
How do I express concern and show that I care? And I don't know, maybe even how do I feel better that they're doing good, kind of thing. People really care. So,
Yeah,
I,
I
I
think
know that it comes from that. But, one of the things that I recommend with that kind of situation is, especially, and things have changed over time with technology, like phone calls, at least to me, feel very, very demanding. You
yeah,
know,
I don't like
you
phone
get a
calls.
call, you have to talk to someone. It's there. But if you send an email or a text, you can always respond to that text later.
That's
It's there's some more distance there.
yeah.
So, or if you want even more distance, social media, private message, like that. Maybe
Mhm.
that person doesn't get these notifications all the time.
Yeah.
So I what people have done for me, which I really appreciated, was reached out to me through one of those more indirect things like text or social media, and said something broad like, "Hey, thinking about you. Let me know if you want to chat sometime."
Right.
And then
That's yeah,
I I will talk about it if I'm ready and wanting to talk about it.
yeah.
You know. Also, my husband, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person, uh, knew how how demanding the emotional energy was when I was already spending so much emotional energy just trying to get through the day.
Mhm.
And so he reached out to several friends who he thought and family members, and he was like, "Okay, everyone, I can keep you updated. I know that you really care. Send me your questions, please.
Oh, that's
Please,
great.
Jessica, please don't." Like, and I know like people want to reach out to people like right before the surgery. I really wanted to. Well, one, because my surgeries were constantly getting canceled, I didn't tell anybody when my
Right.
surgeries were because I was so
Yeah.
afraid that I would jinx it somehow, or
Mhm.
that not even I would jinx it, but the first time that it happened, I got so many messages from people, with well wishes and stuff. And then I had to reply to everyone and say it got canceled. And each time I had to do that was just so heartbreaking. And so
Mhm.
for me personally, and maybe other people feel different, so but that's why like the conversation is important, is to feel out how do you approach, talking to someone about, yeah, talking to a loved one about their upcoming surgery or their medical condition. You have to kind of
Mhm.
learn how that person feels about it.
Right.
So I didn't want to talk to anyone the night before my surgery because I was like freaking out a little bit. So like, will it even happen? And so I just wanted to focus on relaxing, And so my husband updated people, and people sent him texts, and it was so great, to have someone I love
Kinda
help
handle it.
take on the
Yeah.
the emotional burden of that.
Right. For sure.
And he's had his own emotional burdens watching me go through all of this
Mhm.
and not being able to do anything about it. So I recognize that he's had burdens too, and lovingly took this on so that I could try to get through everything the best I could. So that was really, really helpful.
Mhm.
So if you are someone with a chronic illness who's going through something, or like has an upcoming surgery, maybe talking with your spouse, about, hey, can you, you know, update people? Here's a list of people. Can you keep them updated? Tell them I love them. I'm just not up to giving the same update to 20
No.
different people. It's exhausting. We got recovered
It's
from surgery. Our bodies are
Yeah,
doing so much. We
and
got
it's
those
trauma every
big
time too.
to heal.
And before your surgery, or like for instance, when you had to cancel or when it got canceled and you had to tell everybody, every single time you had to tell someone was reliving the trauma
Yeah.
over and over and over and over again. Even if it was a copy and pasted message, you're still having to use those same words over and over and over again. And yeah,
Yeah. And of course, no one could have known that it would get canceled, and that,
right.
that message would, that I would have to respond this way, and that it would be such work. No one
Mhm.
could have predicted that. I mean, unless you looked at the wave of the pandemic and said, that might get canceled. But
Well,
like,
you
it,
know,
it was the first. My first surgery was scheduled for literally the week of the New York shutdown.
right.
So
Was
it
that
was it was I have to think back on years and time now. I
it
should have written
was
down
Well, I'm
dates.
trying to think if it was early 2021 or if it was late 2020.
No, it was early 2020. It was
Was it?
March. It was March.
Oh,
Hmm.
right. Yes, that's right. Because I mean, I've lost time. It's
Me too.
I don't
You
I
know, so
don't trust my memory anymore.
before the pandemic, I had a very skewed sense of time. Like someone asked me, like, Jessica, how old are you? And without missing a beat so solidly, I was like, 26. Was I 26? No. Where did the confidence come from to say it with such like funny like anyway, let's choose some more comments that we've talked about. Talking about invisible illnesses,
Right.
somewhat invisible, visible illnesses, visible, like the whole spectrum is what it is. The I don't see a difference,
Hmm.
very much the same as you don't look sick.
Yes, it is.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
And it's I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I get that personally. I've had people say that to me, "Oh, you look okay," like, because like I said, "Oh, I have long COVID," or, "Well, you look fine.
Right.
Thanks." So, now
Like,
how do I feel though? How do
mhm,
I feel?
it's not a compliment.
No.
Um, it, and I did a lot of stuff to try to mask my symptoms. I relaxed my face. I
Mhm.
also was very into figuring out makeup techniques that would help to create an illusion that my eyes were farther backwards. Which I do have a makeup tutorial for thyroid
Yes.
eye
I watched
disease. If you want to check,
that.
you find it like somewhere on YouTube. Look me up, Tasty Meditation. And it's all about me helping me feel a little bit more like myself. But someone saying like, "Well, I don't see a difference. Like maybe like I was doing my makeup really well that day. It doesn't mean I don't have a problem." You
Mhm.
know, very, very, very real and serious medical condition. And it's just invalidating.
It is, and that's exactly the right word, is invalidating. It makes me personally feel like a hypochondriac when
Yeah.
someone says, "Oh, you look fine." Okay, so what's your point? Like, are you saying that I'm not sick? Are you telling me that maybe that's a me thing where, automatically when someone says something like that to me, it's like I I go inside, like, because I've always been the person that puts aside my own emotions and my own feelings to serve someone else. I'm a
Mhm.
people pleaser. I've always been that way, and so I'm trying to get away from that. So
Mhm.
when someone says that something to me like that, it's like I automatically go inwards, and yeah, that's not helpful.
And
Just
I
not
go
helpful.
inwards too. We aren't speaking for the entire chronic illness
Mhm,
community, but we'll all have different reactions to things. But I think that any person with a chronic illness who has a reaction to a specific phrase is probably not alone.
mhm,
Um, but one of the things that many people told me is, "Oh, you're still beautiful," and I immediately would go internal, and a voice in my head would pop up and say, "But I don't feel beautiful." And it was like immediate every single time. It
mhm.
was,
Yeah.
and that's partly my own, like it's all my own stuff with my illness. But I'm still working through responding to comments about my appearance comfortably. You know. Um, and I can't remember if we talked about it, but I talked with a friend. Shout out to my neighbor, Gluten Free Spartan. You may know her online. I think she's now Gluten Free Wonder Woman on Instagram. But we were talking. I was telling her, I'm so uh, nervous because I've been fairly open about my journey with this online. Um, and I haven't posted pictures in a long time. The only pictures I posted for a long time were me wearing sunglasses,
Mm,
and because that's how I felt most comfortable taking pictures.
right.
Uh, and so I said, "Gosh, I feel like I have set myself up for a big post-surgery reveal, and I'm not." Ugh. Yeah, that was my. And I wasn't ready to have everyone comment on my appearance yet because it was still so deep and so triggering for me. And but I still wanted to take steps towards finding myself again and finding a sense of normalcy, and
And
hopefully,
acceptance. Right.
and taking pictures is part of that. That's a really big step for me, and sharing pictures is a really big step for me too. And so we had this talk, and she had said that she was talking with a friend, and that friend was going through something, and she said, "What do you need to hear right now? What do you need from me?" And I was like, "That is, oh my god, that's so brilliant, that's amazing." Like we can tell people like, "Hey, here's what I'm going through, and this would be really helpful for me."
Mhm.
So that's how I made a post, and I posted like the first sentence was post surgery photo. Please read the caption,
I
and
know.
it explained where I was emotionally, and I was still very nervous. And I was like, "Oh, people will just see the picture and immediately comment." And no one reads things anymore these days, so like no one will ever read it. And so it explained that it was a big step. It explained that things still felt very personal and traumatic, and I'm working through things, but that this is a big step for me. And consider if you would like to leave a supportive comment. I very much appreciate you. And if you would like to leave a comment, please consider saying something else, something that's not about my appearance. Examples: rock on, heart emoji, thanks for being open about your experience, like anything else. And Michelle, I got so many very, very thoughtful and sincere comments from people who took the time to read it, who really wanted to help me in that step. And I was so relieved.
Mm-hmm.
And even there were a couple of people who I think commented something and then deleted it and messaged me and said, "Sorry, didn't read it. Thank you for your vulnerability." And I was like, "Thank you."
Right. Yeah, I remember reading that post, and there were so many supportive comments from people. Some people still commented on your appearance, I noticed too, but
And
very few.
I figured that there would be some people who, it's Instagram.
Yeah, they
Don't
just didn't
people don't.
read it.
If there's a rule I live by, it's that no one reads anything.
Mhm.
Like I was shocked that so many people read it.
Yeah,
And
but
and ultimately, if a couple people commented on my appearance, that was fine. That was
yeah, and
fine.
it was like prefaced by "Thank you for sharing." "You're still beautiful to me," kind of thing. Like they weren't direct comments towards specifically how you looked,
Yeah.
right?
And what was really the concept that was really overwhelming for me was a flood of comments about my
Mhm.
appearance. Like that would have been very overwhelming. But a couple here and there, like, was
It
for
was
me
pretty, yeah.
perfectly fine for me to manage, especially when there were so many other thoughts. Like all the
Mhm.
comments were thoughtful. I really appreciate all of them. So thank you to everyone who wrote nice comments. This was a big step, but like also that like gets into like how do you, if you put your foot in your mouth, how do you, how
How
do
do you
you?
backpedal?
And you know what? I did it one day, and it was like a year ago. Like it was still like within this time. Like I'm not perfect.
Mm.
And I was like casually chatting with someone who I hadn't seen in a while, and I asked him a question, and I was like, "Hey, how's physical therapy going? I hope it's going well." And I realized, like, oh shoot, that may have been a moment. Okay, all right. And I saw it, and I wrote to him later, and I said, "Hi, that was not correct." I think I said, "My apologies.
Mhm.
I did not. I realized. I don't even think I said that. What did I say? I have to go back and look." But I just very simply, in one sentence, said, "I'm sorry that I brought that up." In hindsight, I realized that that was not the correct thing to say in the moment, and I wish you well. Please let me know if I can do anything for you.
That was a good way to respond.
No, so it was like something to that extent, and he responded, "Thank you." And like I think that if someone, I don't know, we try.
Yeah, yeah,
We
and I
try.
mean, we're gonna stick our foot in it. We are. But I guess what the main thing is to learn from the experience and,
Yeah.
you
And
know
part of me wanted to explain it more because we relate to things, right? And we say what
right?
we relate
Right?
and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm so sorry. I realized right after I said it, and this thing went bad, and this thing and that, and the people have said that to me, and oh my gosh, like
Nope.
no."
Nope. Nope.
So I had
Don't
to
do
take a
that.
step back, and I had
That's
to take
hard though.
it was a challenging moment of
Mhm.
self-awareness to say, okay, how do I take a step back and apologize without making it about me?
Right.
It's
That's
not about me.
exactly it.
This is about him. It's not about me relating to something.
Hmm. Hmm. And
It's a,
that's, yeah,
yeah.
people that are just genuinely, well, people that genuinely care about other people. I find that we stick our foots in our mouth more often than not. At least I do.
Mhm.
I say things. I think I do tend to center myself sometimes, not meaning to center myself, but because I want to relate and show them that I understand in some way. But it
Mhm.
is, I'm making it about me, and that's something that I need to personally work on.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah. So when I'm approaching sensitive situations these days, and like I said, I don't do everything perfectly, but I really try and think it's not about what I need. What does the other person need?
right.
And what's what should I say there? Because it's about the
Mhm.
other person, not about me feeling good about something.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Uh,
that really fits with the chronic disability community or chronic illness community as well, because um, people try to relate, I guess, and I think that there's not enough. Sorry, I struggle with my words these days. There's not enough attention being put on the chronic illness community. What happens is they're often COVID, for instance. COVID has turned the disability community into nope, that's not the right way to say it. It's brought it to the forefront. It's
mhm.
brought disability to the forefront, chronic illness to the forefront. This long COVID that's coming. They're trying to figure out how to fix long COVID. They've done nothing for fibromyalgia. They've done nothing for other disabilities. The disability community as a whole is often forgotten.
Mhm.
So, and so that is one thing that I don't want to say it's a good thing because COVID's not good, but it has brought attention to the community. And, but people are trying to relate now, and it just, it's not coming out right.
It's hard. It's hard.
It
And
is.
um, this maybe leads into I sent you a message once. And I don't know if you remember the specific message I'm talking about, but I really was I thought about it for a while because you posted something that I could relate to an extent, with being completely separate things. And there was something that really helped me, but I didn't want to intrude on you. But we're also friends, and I didn't want to like offer advice unsolicited.
Mhm.
And so you tell me if I handled it okay. Which
I think you did. I'm just trying to remember the message, but as
okay,
far as
I'll talk
you,
about
you
it.
must have.
So I had reached out to you, and I think what I said was something to the extent of, "Hey, I saw your recent post. While I can't relate to what's going on with you exactly, there was something that helped me with my thing. If you would like to chat about it, feel free to message me whenever. But otherwise, have a great day."
Hmm,
Something like that.
I don't remember.
It was such a good message,
You can mention what it's about if you want. That's fine. It might jog my memory if you mention what exactly it was about.
It was
But
I had we were talking about when I cut myself a break with things.
oh
I
yeah.
Yeah, I took
Okay,
a
now
long
I remember.
arc and was like beating myself up for not doing the things that I loved because I felt like I had to compartmentalize my life. If I could just finish the surgeries, then I could get to this next part of my life. And I just yelled, "Can I curse on this?"
Um,
I will like bleep myself out. Okay.
yeah,
Uh,
maybe bleep it because I don't. I think that my YouTube channel is okay for kids and it's streaming there. So.
I will bleep myself out. I I just like was walking with a friend. We were in the park, and I just said pretty loud, like, "This experience has been
Mhm,
traumatic," and
mhm,
that just really helped me let some
yes.
to those specific words that I don't know,
Mhm,
traumatic. really helped me just cut myself some slack that, yeah, I'm going through trauma, you
Yeah.
know? This is a hard, hard thing, and it is okay to not be doing my best, you
It's
know?
okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Right?
But like, I didn't want to write you this whole long thing and say, like, this is what helped me, you know?
Right. No, and you know what? And that's perfect. That's perfect. Um, I know someone that I follow on Instagram, recently, her husband contracted COVID and she had to stay on opposite sides of the house as him. And it was really hard for her because they're
Mhm.
very close
Yeah.
and they do everything together. They love to go outside together and bike and all this stuff. And being away from him was really, really hard, right? And so I sent her a message because we're not, I don't know, we're not friends, but I'm friendly with her. Like I really like
Mhm.
her. And so I sent her a message and I said, I'm not going to offer advice, but because Mike just caught COVID again a month ago, and we managed to stay separate. And he lived in the basement for a week, and I didn't get it, or if I did, I didn't test positive.
Mhm.
So, but so like I told her, I just went through this again with my husband, and I can relate. It's hard. And her husband was quite sick, not as sick as I got, obviously, but and she didn't know how to help him. And I said, if you want to chat, we've been through this. I can tell you all about the COVID symptoms that I had and my personal experience with it. So maybe I can give you some ideas on how to help him. That's it. And it wasn't a this is what works for me, kind of thing, or this is what worked for me.
Or
And
try this. Mhm.
right, exactly. It was just a if you want. And she said thank you, and that was it. There's ways to offer your help to someone with a chronic illness without centering
Mhm.
yourself, because your experience is not going to be the same as their experience, and
Exactly.
what worked for you may not work for them.
Mhm.
So it ties into all of the comments we get as people with chronic illness of, oh well, so and so's got it worse than you do, so just be thankful you don't have it as bad as them, right?
Mhm.
And this is the worst it's ever been for myself. So
Mhm.
this is traumatic, you know,
Yeah.
but I'm not them. So, it just, so many unhelpful things get said and they're just downright hurtful.
Yeah. And I think that one of the important things to remember is that when someone is going through a very sensitive and delicate situation, we should approach it in a sensitive and delicate
Yes.
way. And that requires effort and mindfulness and
And some critical
love.
thinking that's often missing.
Yeah, yeah. But like that's another one that you mentioned, the like, oh, it could be worse. I have so many phrases written down like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Like the cheer up. Specifically, it could be worse.
Smile more,
Hmm. Ooh,
Mm.
yay.
There's two words I like to use:
Hmm.
toxic positivity.
Yep.
There are people that talk about toxic negativity all the time, and it's like, it's being negative is so bad for you. But the exact opposite is just as bad because it makes you feel small. It
Yeah.
makes you feel like you are a bad person for not being able to see past what's going on in your life, and spin it into a positive moment. It's very difficult to spin a traumatic experience into a positive moment, especially when you're still in the experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Oh, this gets into so many phrases that,
Right?
one, the cheer up, like, great, fixed it. Uh, to the like, what was it? It could be worse.
Mhm.
You ranking trauma is
Yes.
never a good idea. It always invalidates someone.
Mhm.
There's a difference between like, say I'm talking with a friend, like hypothetical. Oh, my surgeries just get canceled. I'm really struggling with my mental health. I have no idea when this is gonna happen. Everything is awful. I'm not sleeping. And then someone says, I had a really hard day. I lost my favorite hat today. You like, there's a difference between reading the room, and comparing trauma.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it's important to be aware of, sensitive things in the room, you know,
Yeah.
but comparing medical conditions and comparing trauma is never a good idea. It
No.
always someone. And, I talked with a couple of people because I've heard many times, and like in the celiac community too, people have told me that they've heard this too. At least you don't have cancer. And like if you have undiagnosed or untreated celiac disease, it can cause cancer. So,
Mhm.
um, also, I spoke with a couple people who survived cancer and said, why do people talk about me like I'm the worst case scenario?
Right.
Why do I have to be? Why?
Why do I have to? Yeah. Why? Yeah. That's
Why? It's, we are all going through difficult things that are complicated, that are serious, that affect many different aspects of life. And most of the time, when you hear something about one condition, there's probably many, 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 many layers underneath.
Mhm.
And it is just not a helpful thing to rank medical conditions.
No,
You know?
that's not.
And I have said before that my experience with Graves' disease and thyroid eye disease has been more traumatic than celiac disease, you know? And that's me personally talking about my personal experience and
Mhm.
how my body has responded or not responded to treatment. And that's a very realistic component of when you have multiple autoimmune conditions. But definitively, I'm not pushing that on other people and saying, well, at least you don't have this and at least you don't have this. So
Right.
I think there's context that's important as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. Also, I think that some people also feel like their medical conditions were so traumatic to them that nobody else's experience could ever be as bad as what they went through. And so a lot of times that's if they, for instance, survived cancer, it would be like, well, at least you didn't get cancer, like, and they're using themselves as an example of why, well, your situation isn't as bad as it, you
Mhm.
know, your
And
situation wasn't as
sometimes,
bad as mine, kind of thing.
mhm, and sometimes done in a way to try to be helpful,
Yeah.
of to make you at least you don't go through XYZ every day, which I had to go through, which was really, and that's just one of those things of like relating, and
Mhm.
saying that thing out loud again, um, with good intentions, and I had a family member say that a couple of times, and I had to tell them, I love you so much. Can you please stop saying that to me because it's just ultimately not helpful.
Right.
And a year later, they said, I'm really sorry. I'm gonna cry now. It was like the loveliest thing that they said, and I don't think I can ever do it justice, but we just related to each other so much. I didn't know what to say. I know I don't always say the right things, and I'm really sorry, but I really support you, and I want you to be doing really well.
Mhm.
And I mean, to me, that's how say, I put my foot in my mouth.
Yeah. But that's how you relate.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
the way you relate to someone, and I find that when people genuinely aren't
Mhm.
mean, they're not cruel and
Yeah.
gentle, and they want to help. It's just a matter of being respectful of what that person wants. I mean, I have a friend who is very independent,
Mhm.
and she's gone her whole life doing everything for herself. And there's a way to ask someone if they need you or what you can do to help them. Instead of saying, well, I'm going to do this for you, that may not be within their comfort zone to accept that kind of help. So the best thing you can do when someone is talking about a chronic condition or, a disability or whatever, is just simply say, what can I do to help?
Mhm.
Or how can I help you?
Mhm.
And
Or what
then,
do you need from me in this moment?
right, those are, and it's a way to show that you're being supportive. You're not pushing what you think is best on them, and you're allowing them to open up and tell you exactly what it is that they need from you so that you can be that help that you want to be.
Listen,
And
thank someone for their vulnerability, thank them
yes,
for this. If you put your foot in your mouth, I don't know, I feel like that's a good thing to say is, "I didn't say the right thing. Sorry, I didn't know what to say."
hmm,
Someone said that to me, I would've been like, "Okay." Like,
right, right,
thanks for
and
being so aware.
right, and how often do we just really not know what to do, and instead we turn to that toxic positivity
Mhm.
of, well, I don't know how to help you, but it's going to get better. You're going to be okay, and for me personally, it is, I'm going to use my scar for an example because it is there. It is very obvious and it's never going to go away. It's likely a keloid. It's just, it's there. And so when someone says, like, I'll say, well, I'm very vulnerable about this. Like, I need to take new pictures for my social media because I don't look like that anymore.
Me too.
Yeah, and my hair is super thin, so it's super short now in order to keep as much of it in there as I can. So when someone comes to me and says, "Oh, your hair will grow back," or "Oh, your scar will fade over time,"
Mhm.
not helpful.
Yeah.
Not
Or,
helpful.
"Oh, surgery will fix everything, don't worry."
Mm, not helpful, and not true.
Yep.
Just not
Mhm.
true, because the mental scars that your whole situation has left. Nobody can go through that or go through any traumatic experience and not be affected in some way
Mhm.
mentally.
Mhm.
Um,
And
you
for a
know,
lot of people, there's still a lot going on after surgery. Like for
yes,
me, you know, my eyes are still very different than they were before. I'm still waking up in the morning with my eyes in pain. And, my thyroid, not having a thyroid, continuous care for the rest of my life, much easier care than before.
yeah,
Yep,
yeah,
doing great. But you can't boil down a very complex medical condition into one single positive thing. hmm Yeah, and
absolutely.
toxic positivity. I had to make so many notes, otherwise I would go so off track and talk forever. Um, where
We
was I?
tend to do that though, don't we? We have to like cut ourselves off sometimes and say, okay, well, you know
Sometimes.
what? We've been on this
Oh,
for this
we're
long
still doing good, right? Can we keep talking for a bit?
for a couple minutes. Yeah.
A couple minutes. Like everything I'll go through the rest of them that I have real fast. Everything happens for a reason. There's always a lesson to learn. God only gives you what you can handle. Makes a lot of assumption about religion, and that's a whole topic on its own.
Yep.
And again, the toxic positivity. I can pretty much say that I'm no stranger to autoimmune conditions. I learn something that I didn't already know with these two conditions that I didn't from my first one. There was not stuff to learn. There is, and I can't imagine that this pain would happen for some greater purpose. You know,
No,
that's
no,
just that's not fair. That's
no,
not fair.
no.
Um, what else? Let's see. Insert medical advice. We've already talked a little bit about offering advice, but I did have someone who I like posted about my thyroidectomy, and someone said you should do X Y Z, and I politely responded, you know what? I'm working very closely with my doctors. This is what we're doing. This is what we tried, and they responded something like, well, it's really unfortunate that you won't even consider this alternative. And I'm like, you know what? This is really inappropriate because my medical condition, my treatment is being watched very closely by my doctors. And it's, even though I am being open and sharing about it, but it is not anyone's like big business ultimately.
Right.
And and that I don't try so I've talked with my doctors about what would be helpful for me to try in my condition.
Mhm.
And because I say I'm not doing that because my doctors don't say it's helpful, like, don't attack me for it, you know?
Right. Got a
Um,
question here from
right?
someone.
Okay.
Uh, Lionel is asking, has anyone had COVID after celiac diagnosis? I just got COVID today. Um, I don't really want to turn this into a complete COVID discussion, but I mean, it is considered a chronic illness if you have long COVID. But I personally have had COVID after celiac. So, yes.
Mhm. Let's turn the conversation if you want.
The COVID?
No, not not COVID. You want me to keep going down my list?
Yes, I
All right.
do.
All right. I'm extra careful about my lifestyle so I don't get XYZ. Autoimmune
That one.
conditions,
Mm,
and it's one of those things I can relate. Blah. You know, we
yes.
say the
Yeah.
things that, blah. Um, Autoimmune conditions are complicated. Largely, they are not based on lifestyle. Largely, they are based on genetics,
Mhm.
on and statistically on things like age and sex and family history and other autoimmune conditions. So many things that we can't control. And so when you say, well, I'm like, sure, try whatever you want. But by saying that to someone who has the chronic condition, in a way, it's like flipping it around and saying, well, you must have done
They're
something.
blaming you. That's right. They're blaming you for
And it's
your
not the
condition.
intention, but it's ultimately like what the flip side of that
Mhm.
is that somehow we weren't careful because we got the disease.
See, maybe I'm wrong in saying this, but usually when that comes up in conversation, a lot of the times it is blame because
Mhm.
it's coming from a place of privilege and it's coming from a place of someone who has the time and money to spend on personal trainers and um, you know what I mean? Like there's a certain subset of people. I'm going to use Instagram as an example, but there's a certain subset of influencer who pushes the health things and you know
Mhm.
and they're the ones that are usually the ones that come up and say, well, if you try my program or if you were taking this, because I personally got that, you know,
Mhm.
again with COVID. Sorry, I tend to go back to that a lot and I try not to, but when I caught it, it was, oh, you need to be taking a high dose of vitamin D every day. Joke's on you. I take 5,000 milligrams a day, you know?
Yeah.
So it's that, it's almost like that that know it all
Yeah.
vibe.
Like, let's be real. Turmeric only goes so far. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Right? I know. And I mean, and it's the same with all kinds of wellness products in general.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's almost a religion on its own, to be quite blunt.
Yeah. Let me see.
Yeah.
What else do I have? Here's a fun celiac centered one. The
Mm.
good old one. The oh my god, I would die if I had to give up bread.
If I couldn't eat wheat.
Like,
Oh
oh,
my goodness.
you would die if you had to be me.
Right? Like, oh, and it makes you feel like a victim almost, right?
Hmm.
Just for me, it's like, oh, I would die if I had to do that. Well, I'm not a victim here. I mean, why? Why would you
As
feel
I
that way?
as I eat my third gourmet pizza of the day.
Right? No kidding. I mean, I just got a box of goodies from one of the companies that have these huge slices of bread in them, and they're
Hmm.
gluten free. And I can't wait to make a sandwich on it. And I'm sorry, but I am not deprived in the food department. I
Right?
mean,
You know,
I
one of
am.
the things that we would do in normal times, uh, with like having parties and things like that, I would make everything from scratch. I would make my best pizza. I
Mhm.
would make the really impressive chocolate chip cookies, and people would come up to me with like cookie crumbs pouring out of their mouths, and like, how did you make this so good? Like, you would die if you had to eat like me. Really, what a rude thing.
Mhm.
Like, and
Right?
that's one of those things where we don't think about it. It's like the thing
Yeah.
like your eyes look crazy. Like what we aren't thinking when we say something sometimes. And when you think about it and take a step backwards, maybe you think, "Oh, that was just not nice."
No, no,
No. No.
and I mean, and especially with the see that particular comment really bothers me. The one about I would die if, because it's part of the reason why I do what I do with MJF Kitchen, right? Is I love, like I really, really, it's a passion for me showing people how much delicious food there is that is either naturally gluten free or that you can make gluten free. Like,
Mhm.
so, I stage photos, I make delicious food, and I make sure I post about it because people need to know that just because you received a celiac diagnosis does not mean you cannot enjoy delicious food, you
And
know?
that's one thing about it is that posting beautiful pictures of absolutely delicious food is a form of advocacy for our community because we're
Yes.
fighting this stigma that gluten-free food sucks and that our
Mhm.
lives are so deprived of goodness. And one of the things that my husband would do is if we were having a double date with another couple and we were going to a restaurant that had a gluten-free menu and a regular menu, he would tell them, "Hey, order off the gluten-free menu today. We'll explain to the server what's going on and how we're ordering. And we want to show you that gluten-free food is amazing." So like one
Mhm.
of, one of his like sneaky bits of advocacy would be
Right.
to get
That's
all of his
great.
friends to eat gluten-free with us.
And
And
show them that it's not bad at all. It's great.
it's pretty great. So,
Yeah.
ultimately the people who are like, "I would die if I had to eat that." I mean, I'm probably gonna make them cookies.
Mhm. Right? Yeah, it's like, "Please let me feed you. Let me feed you," you know?
I'm gonna get a
I
whole lot of messages now of people saying, "I would die if I had to eat your delicious chocolate chip cookies."
Well, one of these days, if and when it ever happens, if COVID ever goes away, I would love to host something here. I mean, obviously, people would have to fly to me, and I'm not sure that that's a possibility. But honestly, I would love to have my advocate friends come and let me feed you. Just
I'll bring
as
some
a
cookies.
thank you, and bring cookies. You have to bring your cookies and pizza.
Yeah. I'll just bring like my 17-pound baking steel with me to your kitchen.
Bring it all with you, or tell me the ingredients you need, or I'll bring you to the store and you can get them there.
I'll
But
figure.
wouldn't that just be wonderful? I would love to. There's so many people that I have met in this community that I would just love to sit and break gluten-free bread with.
Mhm.
And
Indeed.
it's been quite the journey.
Yeah.
And they've been, the community as a whole, followers and everybody has just been there for me, like, just
Mhm.
it's amazing. So,
Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, it's been a wonderful. I don't know. I don't ever want it to end, but I think we do have to say goodbye today.
It was such a good chat. I did make it to the end of my list, but
Oh no.
if someone
Let's
else has any comments that you're hearing about, I don't know. I'm ready to write a part 3 of this article already of what not to say to people. It just keeps going. But it's an important conversation, so
It
feel free to
is.
we'll
It
talk.
is. And I think at the end of Celiac Awareness Month, I also want to just put everything together into a big blog post, attach the videos, and maybe if you do, maybe I'll get you to write a little extra something for it with your full list so that we can get it all down. If you want to actually take a couple minutes and just run through what you've got and
Of
read it
what
through.
not to say to people?
Just what's that?
Of what not to say to people? What
Yes,
list?
let's run through them quickly. I'll squeak an extra 2 minutes out of this.
All right, here, real fast, lightning round. I can't see the difference. You don't look sick. Cheer up. It could be worse. At least you don't have XYZ. Insert medical advice. I'm extra careful about my lifestyle choices so I don't get XYZ. Everything happens for a reason. There's always a lesson to learn. God only gives you what you can handle. I'm your friend. I don't care what you look like. You'll get surgery. Everything will be fine. You're still beautiful. Reaching out specifically to question health. I would die if I had to give up bread.
And you know what? When you're gluten free, you don't have to give up bread because gluten free bread is real bread. I want to
Exactly.
stress that.
It is bread.
Yes. And
It's
I see that often. Oh, well, are they as good as real bread?
it is real bread.
It's I can hold it and I can eat it wrapped around meat and cheese and lettuce and it's bread.
Mhm.
I can assure you it's bread.
Right?
It's
It's not imaginary bread. It's not
no.
just air.
So the whole real thing.
I know
Even
what people mean, but I would love it if we got rid of the real bread thing.
yes, I
I
would
would
too.
love it. Now I'm gonna go make myself an air sandwich.
Oh,
Like
right. Excellent. Let me know how that goes. Send pictures.
it's just gonna be meat.
We ate dinner already, so
A chunk of meat.
yum, meat. Yeah.
Thank you
Well,
so much for having me. It is always a pleasure, a joy, a privilege. It is everything to talk with you and to talk with someone in such detail and with such vulnerability and acceptance. Thank you for inviting me again.
yeah. Thank you for coming and ditto, honestly, right back at you. You're one of the people that I've talked to the most probably through everything. And it's been great to be able to have someone to relate to. Not everyone is as
Same.
open to um, just chatting, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm. Ditto.
well, thank you. I appreciate it. So
I,
I'm gonna get all emotional now.
I've already cried once. You haven't cried yet.
There are some people in this community that I know I would be fast friends with in person as well. So, and you're one of those people. So,
That's one of the things that I think we should also change too. Like the online friends now, we're
yes, that's
friends.
true. Yeah, friend is friend. Friend is friend. Just like bread is bread.
Friend is friend is friend.
Friend is friend. I
Yeah,
have made a
tell them.
lot
Bread is
of
bread, friend is
friends.
friend.
I'm gonna write that now somewhere. It's gonna be like a tagline. Hashtag bread is bread.
I love it.
Okay, well, I thank you again. I appreciate the time that you've spent, an hour and 42 minutes. And I hope that everyone who joined enjoyed the talk, and it will be recorded and it will be available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for your enjoyment and sharing ability. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you.
we'll talk to you soon.
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.